This is for you new people. I only have one rule. Everyone fights, no one quits. If you don't do your job, I'll shoot you. You get me?
We get you, sir!
Welcome to the Roughnecks.
Wildcats, Roughnecks!
At ease, listen up. Got a new sky marshal and a new battle plan. Gonna clean out the system's outlying Clendathu one planet at a time. Before we hit Tango Urilla. After Fleet glasses the planet, MI mops up. Carry on.
It's Chet. My name is Chet. Hi, Nanny. Hi, Grampy. I'm not a moron, you know. Was that my grandparents? Are they dead?
Oh, no, they're just resting.
What are they doing in here?
I put them in there. I didn't want the boys to get into trouble. Quite frankly, they weren't having a very good time at the party.
Not having a good time? Do you think they're having a good time being catatonic in a closet? Do you have any idea how disrespectful that is? Boy, before I want to get to the bottom of this. ASAFP.
Excuse me, doctor. Is he gonna remember any of this?
Not a thing.
Oh, really? See you at the party.
Hey, Ripley, don't worry. Me and my squad of ultimate badasses will protect you. Check it out. Independently targeting particle beam phalanx. Whap! Fry half a city with this puppy. We got tactical smart missiles, phase plasma pulse rifles, RPGs. We got sonic electronic ball breakers. We got nukes. We got knives, sharp sticks.
Knock it off, Hudson. All right, gear up.
Somebody wake up Hicks.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to Geek Fest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and joining me, I have Steve Avona. Say hi, Steve.
Hey, Carlos.
Well, we've done a little bit similar to this in the past where we talked about cult movies. What is a cult movie and what makes it different than a regular movie and that sort of thing. And what we wanted to do today is talk specifically about the actors that appear in these cult movies. So this is kind of like a cult actor special. There are certain names that pop up every now and then that, they might not be the Academy Award winning actors that, every year are nominated, but they're actors that no matter what they do, some of us will kind of like take a second look at, okay, well, we'll try it. We'll see what they're doing, that sort of thing. Some of their movies are some of my favorite movies, ever made. Again, no Academy Award winners here, at least a lot of them. But these guys show up, they're working actors, and they keep busy, and for whatever reason, they seem to go away sometimes and kind of come back. So we got a couple of them here. Let's start with Michael Ironside. Now, Steve, what was the first time you ever heard of Michael Ironside?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think we should also mention that these guys, they're, I think, the most noteworthy output, you might want to say, is from the 80s and early 90s. They were in films that, we love, and they still are working actors today. But a lot of them, I would say with the exception of maybe Bruce Campbell, they sort of peaked. And, even though their sort of reputations are built on the movies that we loved when we were in, like high school and college.
Right.
Michael Ironside, he's probably the least of all the guys that we're going to talk about in terms of cult popularity. I remember him, sort of as just a working character actor. My most vivid memory of him would probably be Total Recall, but I also remember him from movies like Top Gun. He was also the villain in Highlander 2, which is a horrible, horrible movie, but I've seen it a lot because I love the Highlander films.
Let's take them in order as far as like how far back we can go with them. Now, granted, a lot of these guys, like you said, they're working actors and they've done tons, and I mean tons of television also.
Sure.
To the point where you look at their IMDb list and it is staggering. It's like, my God, these guys must be so unbelievably successful because they're always working. They seem to have 4 or 5 projects every year, in the works.
Yeah, but
Now,
they're not making the kind of money that these other actors do.
A
And
lot of them are doing voiceover work. A lot of them are doing secondary characters, tertiary characters. With Michael Ironside, for example, the earliest thing I remember with him was a movie that I remember I wouldn't watch it first because it had a bad reputation. And that was Scanners.
The Scanners, yeah.
And it's a Cronenberg film, which right off the bat tells you, oh my God, you better be careful where you better tread lightly into Cronenberg.
Right. Yeah. And of course, the famous poster is Ironside, with his head about to blow up.
He's like
watching a guy's head blow up.
Which is weird because it was kind of like a sci-fi film about guys with, speaking of, our current topics of interest, comic book superhero, guys with mutant powers.
Right.
And he was the baddie. He was the guy who could make people's head explode by thinking about it.
Yeah. And I honestly, I'll be straight up with you. I never saw Scanners. And I'm not not a huge Cronenberg fan either, so I haven't seen a lot of his films.
Way after it came out. I probably saw it in the 90s because, like I said before, the pictures that I've seen on Starlog magazine, they frightened me.
Yeah.
I was like 11 years old when this movie came out. I'm like, whoa, this is a little too intense for me. But later when I got to see it, it's actually an entertaining horror sci-fi movie, which, again, he's kind of the lead bad guy, which he's kind of done later in the movies. Now, I remember also in the 80s when they were having these really god-awful films, sci-fi films. There was one called Space Hunter. And I think I could be wrong.
That was one of the 3D films.
It was one of these 3D films. He had so much makeup on. He was the monster bad guy again. Yeah. It was horrendous. But I remember what's more noticeable about it was because it was this resurgence of 3D, but it was the blue-red 3D, the ugly 3D. It was horrible. After that, when I actually got into his stuff that I loved was with the V television series.
Right. Yes. Yeah. He was not in the miniseries. He was on the TV show.
He was Tyler Hamm, I believe. Mm-hmm. I think he was in the sequel. He was in the V: The Final Battle, which then led to the actual V television series.
Right.
And that lasted quite a bit. I think they did like a season and a half or one season. Mm-hmm. It was a disaster after a while, but his character kind of became his standard character. That guy that he played in that series.
Sort of grouchy,
the kind of angry, grouchy, like you said, cold, very cold character. That became his character, I think, for the rest of his career.
Well, he was either playing a straight-up villain or like the curmudgeonly, grouchy sort of, he's a hero, but nobody likes him, and he's sort of a dick.
Now, with Top Gun, like you mentioned, all of a sudden, he's in a big-ass movie. And he kind of doesn't stick out, but he blends in really well to those characters. Everybody in Top Gun looks like a music video because it's what it was, that movie, more or less.
Yeah.
And he kind of fit in. He played Jester, I think.
Yeah, it was a well-cast movie. You had...
everybody was in it.
And you had Tom Skerritt, who was an alien.
Exactly.
Good character actors in that movie. And if Michael Ironside was going to be in an A-list movie, and like a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about, they weren't going to be the star. If they were in a more of a B-list movie, they might be a star, or they might be like a second or a third star. Right. But if they're going to be in a bigger movie, they're going to be like, sixth or seventh down, and they're going to play sort of maybe not a pivotal role, but a memorable role. Let's put it that way.
Right. Plus, you had to also remember that the early 80s was also the birth of home video.
Right.
And a lot of these guys, when, they would supplement their income like they do nowadays with the home video industry. So for every movie that they got made in the theater, there's probably 10 that go straight to video.
And that's where a lot of these guys' careers are as we speak.
Now, after Top Gun, another big one for him was Total Recall. Again, playing the super, super heavy.
Yeah, I would say Total Recall has to be his defining film as a villain and his biggest success.
Because it's a big movie, it's a Schwarzenegger film, and he's the lead baddie, more or less.
Well, he's like Ronnie Cox's number 2.
Right, he's the enforcer.
Yeah, I was surprised that he didn't get more bounce from it. After Total Recall, he still worked. But I think his follow-up to Total Recall was Highlander 2. And
right. In other words, like you said before, Total Recall was probably the peak. Well, that's where he peaked. Highlander 2, oh my God. I mean, I couldn't. You know this movie even more than I do. I know you have some sentimental feelings for it, but where it sits amongst the rest of these Highlander films.
It's awful. It's the worst one. I mean, without question. It's the one I was so, It's one of the biggest gut punches I ever had because I love the first one. It's one of my top 10 of all time. And this movie I was waiting and waiting and waiting for. And, 5 years, 6 years after the first one. And, I'm one of the few people in the world to see it opening day. And that piece of crap was just, and they recut the film to make it a little bit more palatable, but it still sucks.
Yeah. He's the lead baddie, but it's in a really bad movie, so it really doesn't.
And
doesn't
you know
really
what?
give him much.
He's so hammy in it and so scenery chewing.
Oh yeah,
it's a bad performance, and he's better when he's more subtle, like he was in Total Recall.
Now his next kind of movie that hit the radar was in '97. A few years later with Starship Troopers. He's now kind of a smaller character in a bigger film. It's almost like a Top Gun version of his character in terms of he's one of these military trainers. He's a rough and tough type of guy, but obviously in a much smaller profile film.
Right.
But I did love his role. I love that role he played in that movie.
It's important. One of the things that, maybe we should make this clear is that what do these actors benefit from the most? And I think it'll become much more apparent with some of these other actors that we're going to discuss. But it's a relationship with a certain director that really, really pumps these guys up. And with Michael Ironside, it's with Paul Verhoeven. He put him in two of his most successful films, and that raises his profile. These directors know that these actors are good actors who can deliver a good performance. They can sort of build a role around these actors, or they know, even if, this is something we should talk about with the other actors, even if they're not their first choice for the role, they may slip into, okay, I didn't cast him initially, but he's going to be perfect for this role. I'm in a bind. I need to call up Michael Biehn and get him in. And I'm obviously alluding to the situation with Aliens, which we'll get to. But, that's what these actors who now many of them do the convention circuit, not so much Michael Ironside, although he has, and they trade on their popularity in a certain number of films that we all love. Even, the stuff they might be doing now might be just total crap, but they're paying the bills. But now this nostalgia has built up around these films that we love, when we were in our late teens and early 20s, and now we're in our 40s, and that's the stuff we want to see. We don't care about this Twilight and all this other tween crap. So, aside from like the Marvel stuff, I'm watching my old favorites from the 80s.
Exactly.
And these guys are, doing the convention circuit, and they're cleaning up.
Well, they realize that, to them, these movies might be just all the same. It's just another job, just another job, just another job. However, because of the popularity, they know that some of these guys, especially the ones we're talking about right now, are the type of movies that will get them extra exposure and might actually lend them future jobs.
Yeah.
Because there are people that, actually like their work.
Yeah.
No offense, but they like you.
Yeah. And I like these guys too. And it's, it's depressing to me to see the state of their careers now, because I think they're great actors and you think they're great actors. And, for lots of different reasons, they're just not going to be cast in movies now, popular movies, whether it's age related or they did too many bombs and they're not considered marketable. There's a lot of different factors.
Well, that's why a lot of these actors end up being secondary players in these,
or they do
current
more TV. Michael Ironside, he was
in ER for a while.
Yeah, he was also on Smallville in a recurring role as Lois Lane's father.
That's right.
Again, they never stop working.
Right. Now, another, I don't know if you can call it was kind of like an artsy film he did with Christian Bale called The Machinist.
I didn't see that.
He was also playing a weird kind of background kind of character. And again, most recently, Terminator Salvation, he played a kind of like a resistance anti-robot
that's
fighter.
Perfect for him.
In the submarine. And then in X-Men First Class, only a few years ago, again, he played a military type, small role. It was one of these things where you see him and he's like, oh crap, this film just became a little bitter now.
Yeah, and it makes us happy, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like they're throwing us a bone. It's like, it's that sort of thing. So he's a guy, again, this is a guy that I keep following, and whenever he shows up, especially in something good, it's like a bonus. Now, let's move on to our second actor. This guy is probably very unusual because he seems to peak and come down and then peaks again and comes down. Well, I'm talking about Bill Paxton, one of my favorite, cult actors.
Oh, I love him.
Now, before I even noticed who he was and recognized him for what he has done, he had a couple of, I would consider big films in his resume, including Stripes.
Oh, that must have been a very small role.
He was one of the privates in the crew of soldiers in Stripes. It was a very small role. He was also in the Lords of Discipline, another one of these, I think it was like a military school,
academy,
racial issues and that sort of thing. He had a very small role there too, but it was enough to get him noticed to finally in 1984 hook up with James Cameron for the first time at that point and do The Terminator.
Right. Yeah. And it's a very small role, memorable role, but small role.
Yes.
And there you start the progression and the relationship that he develops with Cameron that served him very well. I would say of all the actors that we're going to talk about today, Paxton is probably the most successful, the most mainstream, and, the one who's probably gotten the best work outside of, say, working with just Cameron or working with, whoever, Verhoeven or whatever. Like, he's had a really impressive career. He sort of almost cracked the A-list, but not quite.
Yeah, he's almost always there. I mean, again, in Terminator, it was a very minor role. He played like one of the punks that the Terminator kills in the beginning.
Yeah.
Then from there, he jumps over to Weird Science. Again, completely different subject matter, comedy, and he has this memorable role of a kind of like a militaristic a-hole brother that delivers some of the best lines in the movie.
He was Chet, and he was hysterical. I thought that Weird Science is one of my favorite movies of the 80s, and it's so off the wall, batshit crazy, and he's hilarious in it.
He's great. He's absolutely wonderful in it.
He kind of steals the movie. And then, to see where he went from there.
Well, from there, he jumps to Commando. Again, back to the big action, crazy, action-y type of movies, which is like, wow, all of a sudden this guy's working with Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, he probably makes the biggest impression on me with Aliens.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you're talking about
stealing a movie.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a movie that spawned the careers of a lot of the actors we're talking about today.
Exactly.
And he even sort of creates a group of actors for like a film the following year that I know is very near and dear to you.
Yes, this is a movie that I keep promising one day I'm going to do a full show on it but it's kind of like my Citizen Kane.
Well,
it's
yeah,
the one that I don't want to see it and I don't want to talk about it because I'm saving it.
Right.
This is Near Dark I'm talking about.
Right.
The best vampire film ever made.
Right. And yeah, that's one that's should do a commentary on.
Like you said, this is basically all of Cameron's crew reuniting
Yeah.
and doing a film, the following year.
And dumbass
great.
Michael Biehn turned down a role in Near Dark, and Adrian Pasdar played the role instead, whereas you could have had another guy from the crew do that movie, and how much better would that have been?
Now, from there, he also got involved in music because he apparently was hooked on to some of the ex-members of Devo. And they did a music video called Reach. And again, they recycled all their Near Dark people to shoot this video, which again is amazing.
What's her name directed the video?
I think Cameron directed it.
Oh, was it Cameron?
They brought in Cameron for a day just to direct the video, but he used all of her actors from Near Dark.
Okay.
Which is really most of the actors from Cameron. And remember, at that time, Cameron and Bigelow were intertwining.
Yeah, he was still married to Gail Ann Hurd, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly he was hitting at that time.
I think he was always, waiting for, he was married to one and banging the other. He was waiting
for his next star to appear so he could marry her.
I love that Reach.
It's a goofball video, but it's funny.
And it's, the band is called Martini Ranch?
Martini Ranch, yeah.
He's hilarious in the video.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like he has this character, and you see his character pop into movies every now and then, but it's not the entire movie. It's this goofball, young, cowboy-y type of, I don't give a crap about anything goofball.
Yeah, but as he gets older, I mean, he plays some much more mature roles.
Right. He's definitely changed. Now, we're still talking in the 80s here. As the 90s move on, it starts to pepper a little different stuff into it. Now, given Navy SEALs at the time, I think it was Charlie Sheen, Michael Biehn, him, again, it was a very testosterone type of film. Predator 2, not the best sequel ever made, but it was something, and he was a secondary character in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, One False Move. This is where he starts to turn.
Yeah.
This is one of these films that he makes, and he's probably like nervous as hell because this is definitely different than anything else. This is a straight dramatic cop crime
Dark
film
movie, yeah.
that all of a sudden people started noticing him as a serious actor.
Yep. Yeah, and then from there, I think he goes to True Lies. Oh, no.
Tombstone.
Tombstone, which is, I love Tombstone.
Straight Western.
Yeah, straight up Western. Great ensemble cast.
Again.
Michael Biehn, is in it.
Is Kurt Russell in it?
Kurt Russell is the star.
Yeah.
And you have Sam Elliott, and you have Bill Paxton, you have Michael Biehn, you have Powers Booth, who's a great actor. He's another one of those guys, and we're not talking about him today, but
this was around the same time that Wyatt Earp had come out, I think.
Yes, and this is the much more popular film.
They were like battling films.
Yeah, and Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really excellent ensemble. And that's the thing, he sort of, in One False Move, you could say that. In a smaller movie, he might be the star. But he's never, even in the biggest productions he's ever done, he's like the third guy.
Right.
And you circle back to Cameron in True Lies.
Well, that's what happens next. He dips back into Cameron.
Yeah.
And again, he's playing a comedic kind of role, which the whole movie is kind of an action comedy almost.
Right. And he plays the really sort of like goofball
the
character.
car salesman type of a jerk.
Yeah.
And now after that, he jumps to a little more, still kind of genre-ish, but it's more serious, Apollo 13.
Oh, yeah. That's, I would say, possibly his best dramatic film.
Mm-hmm.
One False Move might be another, but I think that's a fantastic film. And, he's up there with Tom Hanks and
he's
Kevin
surrounded
Bacon.
by the best.
Yeah. Ed Harris. It's just a total A-list production. And
he was definitely the third guy in the capsule, Yeah. But guess what? You're in that capsule with those superstars at the time.
Exactly.
After that, we jump back to a little more action-y type of thing with Twister, which was at the time, a very visual effects heavy. Holy crap, I can't believe they can make this type of film. It was more impressive for the effects, I guess, than the actual performances.
Yeah, that was during a time when a lot of these disaster movies were in vogue. And it was an enjoyable film and one of the better ones, I think.
Now, after that, probably one of the biggest films of the time, not necessarily his role, but for the time, Titanic. Holy crap, talk about James Cameron hitting a peak.
Yeah, and if you're Bill Paxton, even no matter how well you're doing, if James Cameron calls you and says, I have a role for you and it's only going to be 20 minutes.
Sure, I'll mop the floor.
I'll be there,
Right.
So,
it was huge, not for him directly, but the fact that he's in it.
It doesn't hurt him to be in it.
Just put that on your resume. Now, speaking of earlier One False Move, he now has A Simple Plan, which is a movie that you're very familiar with.
Oh, yeah. Sam Raimi.
There you go. Talk about another person trying to move into the serious realm.
Yeah. And again, sort of a quirky, but not too quirky. What I liked about Sam Raimi, or maybe it's just a taste thing. I think, some people might say, like, I don't go as quirky as like the Coen brothers. I don't like the Coen brothers except for a very few of their films.
But it did have a little Coen-ish type of taste to it.
Yeah, they had a little bit of that in
Between
it.
the locations and Billy Bob Thornton.
Bob, yeah, definitely. But yeah, it might not have been such a huge hit, but he's really packing his resume with really top level stuff with great directors, and again, his career is progressing. And I think what ends up happening, to Paxton is that he tries to kind of crack the A-list with Thunderbirds, and that was such a disaster that I think that really killed him as
the thing that's interesting about him also is that he's also had a shot at directing, and he kind of does it every now and then.
Yeah.
The biggest one I remember that I was very impressed with was Frailty with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, that was great.
A thriller horror type of crime thing, which was really disturbing in a way.
Yeah.
Which was like, holy crap, this guy can actually pull off a little directing too, which was very impressive for me. Now, he, just like we mentioned before, this guy has also dipped into television because it seemed like, I don't know, maybe his career was slowing down a little bit, but he spent about 5 or 6 years in Big Love, the HBO series.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of these actors do. If their movie career isn't going the way they'd like, there's a lot of quality stuff now on cable television, and tons and tons of A-list actors are going there because that's where the good material is.
Plus, in his particular case, he cannot pull off the young, wild guy anymore.
No.
I remember at one point, his nickname used to be Wild Bill Paxton, because he had this reputation for being just this kind of crazy guy, but he's probably in his late 50s now, and he can't do that anymore.
Right.
So he's a more serious actor now. And one of the last things I saw him as far as films go is a great movie called Haywire.
I haven't seen it.
I don't know if you've ever seen. Oh my God, it's an excellent, excellent crime thriller with Michael Fassbender's in it. I think Sonnenberg is the director.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the girl's name. She's like this MMA fighter who's an actress now. Ewan McGregor is in it.
Mm-hmm.
Antonio Banderas is in it. Channing Tatum is in it.
Oh, wow.
I'm telling
what a
you,
cast.
do not miss this movie. The music is awesome, and he plays a pretty important character, and you can tell he's an older guy now. But what seems to be the cherry on top of this cake is the fact that all of a sudden he's been assigned to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. As
And
a
tell us a
recurring
little about
character.
that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a recurring character, and he's, again, spoilers, he turns out to be a big bad. You know, he starts out as an ally of Coulson, and it turns out he's Hydra. Again, it's just great that he shows up. You know, Bill Paxton is the kind of actor who you expect. You've seen him in roles playing sort of a military type who's a good guy. And so people like us have an expectation of, him being a good guy. And they pull the wool over our eyes with his character in S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right, because he almost never plays a bad guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I love that. And just the fact that he's still on the show as we're recording this episode. And I don't know how much longer he'll be on the show. But, again, so many of these actors who you never thought would do television are doing television now because there's some quality parts there for them.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think he's been doing very well for himself. Again, probably the best of all the other actors that we're talking about. Although I will say this, he's finally doing conventions.
That's
and that's
right.
usually a sign that there's a problem or that the career is sort of hit its peak and now they're looking to make a few extra bucks.
Well, Big Love ended. That was a steady gig for like almost 5 or 6 years.
Right, but Paxton has never really had a hard time finding work. So
No,
but
you're
now
right.
but now he's figuring, okay, time to hit the conventions, and that's fine with me because I need his autograph, so
Well, this brings us to the end of part 1 of our Cult Actor special. I'd like to thank Steve Vavona for joining me today. And please join us again next week when we will continue as we'll cover our 3 remaining actors, Bruce Campbell, Lance Henriksen, and Michael Biehn. So on behalf of everybody here at Geek Fest Rants, see you next time.
Hey, I think this guy's a couple cans short of a 6-pack.
John Connor, prophesized leader of the resistance. Soldier, you put every man and woman in this sub in jeopardy with your little frogman stunt. What the hell are you doing here?
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
There's a whole generation of scanner soldiers just a few months away from being born. We'll find them, train them to be like us, bring the world of normals to their knees. Rule an empire so brilliant, so glorious, we'll be the envy of the whole planet.
Maybe you haven't been keeping up on current events, but we just got our asses kicked, pal.
But you people got real lucky last night and pulled off a nice stunt. Without proper leadership, you're gonna get hung out to dry. Now we're organized and we have a plan, and we have a new kind of ammo to cut those lizards in two. Now you can stay independent, and get wiped out, or you can join the organization and really help hammer punch these lizards back off the planet.
Well, that's great. That's just great, man. Now what the are we supposed to do? We're some real pretty now, man. That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over. What the are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
I'm 16 years old. I don't have a girlfriend, or there's no girl in sight.
Jeez, man, what are you, like Laux with the coughing here? Jesus.